from Peter de Groot, my partner in Deng Salmon. Pete has over 25 years in the construction and property industry in the Netherlands, the UK and Western Australia, so he's very familiar with all environments. Here she is. We just said thank you to you. Come on in. That's Sandy Angie, for those that aren't aware. Peter is also a startup and scale-up entrepreneur in multiple industries. He's a concept developer in the urban arena, a member of the expert team of housing advising the Dutch government. Peter's also driving the Flex City team in the Netherlands, which you'll hear much more about today. So how do we get here, you ask? Well, Peter and I met each other about 5 or 6 years ago, as you do, at your children's school. And at that time, he was going his fly in, fly out, so he's here half the time and in the Netherlands half the time, even during COVID. Yes, he did quarantine, so we didn't, talk during those times. And he would come back from the Netherlands and he'd be telling me about the most amazing things that he was working on. And in my mind, I'm going, we need to get this out. We need our government here and our industry leaders to really hear about the innovations that are happening in the Netherlands. Hence, Deng Salmon and the start of Deng Salmon. A year ago, almost to the day, in this room, we come along to hear Brad talk about the work that him and his team were doing in sustainability and housing. And he was at the start of a international research exercise, and that's how the journey started. As I say, the rest is history, or the journey has just started. So I'll hand over to Brad to talk about that journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Christy. And really nice to be here in Balloon. I want to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Whadjuk people. And Sandy, I know you're sitting up the back there trying to be incognito, but thank you to you for an amazing event. And last night's launch was extraordinary. And so thanks to you, because this is, I know, an amazing amount of work, but bringing together so many good people to talk about good ideas is great. So thank you. It's great. Peter's going to be the main act, but it is, as Christy was saying, we kind of met here this time last year, thinking about the housing crisis as part of the broader work that I was doing on climate positive Perth around how we solve it. And in many ways, we want to talk largely about solutions today, but I think it's worth framing why there's an opportunity to rethink what we're doing. And because I can't help but think that Perth's housing crisis is so multifaceted, it's hard to work out what we're doing well, and in the sense, and I stop to say that. So we're doing the housing in the wrong place, and the bit that we're doing in the right place is the wrong kind, and the density of, which is actually the small bits of right kind we're doing, which is very small bits, is largely ad hoc and not near transit, and we're not delivering affordability for young people to buy a home or housing diversity that meets the housing that we need, and we're certainly not building low carbon, in fact zero carbon housing that should be part of a climate future. Somehow we're not doing any of those things, but that's also the opportunity and the inspiration. So let's just talk through those really quickly. I showed this slide 1,000 times, but literally you could, this photo's probably taken 10 years ago now, but every time you go, it looks the same now, just further up the coast, because the world's longest city is just getting longer, and that's, you've all seen this. Perth was a compact city that actually ran along the river until about 1950, and at that point, when we all got cars, and we realised actually, it's this idea. We became a very car-dependent city, and then by 2022, where we became one of the longest cities in the world, not the longest, and we have no plan to make that more compact or to actually reverse that. In fact, it's just accelerating. In fact, at the moment, 70% of all new housing is on that fringe, up and down the coast, and only 30% is in the urban fabric, even though our target's 47, a target we've never reached since that's been put in place, even though it's the weakest target in the country. And so most of our housing is going in the wrong place. And then the housing that we are doing, the small amounts of infill we're doing is looking like this, and I have to make a joke so that John did take this photo, and as a celebration of our new housing, and I can't help but go, really? We're really going to Instagram this as an example of what we're we're doing, because there's so many parts of this that I think are exactly what we shouldn't be doing. But look, it is not just Department of Communities that are doing this housing. This is just actually the standard model that you literally see. This destructive, dumb density that we just do again and again. And I appreciate many of you have seen these slides before, but they are worth repeating around. So of that 30%, that smaller bit of infill we're doing, 80% of that 30% looks like this. So, which it starts to show how little housing we are getting that's actually of the right kind and in the right place. And we are literally seeing our tree canopy disappear with that. Peter Lee last night, that stat that he mentioned at the opening last night, I hadn't heard before, but he was saying that we stopped measuring our tree count publicly, at least, in 2020. But between 2015 and 2020, I think he said that 1 in 6 trees was lost in Perth. If that continues, it doesn't take, you get a real sense of where we're going as a city, and especially when you add in, and that's pre Bora, So just to put those things in context, and the rare density that we're getting is oddly placed. I was just walking through Canning Bridge, and I was like, I don't know what happened to overshadowing rules there, but anyway, but there is this weird sense of, okay, we are, look, and Canning Bridge is actually a kind of, in many ways, Perth success story when it comes to density, and but I'm not sure it's landing on the ground level in a way that we would get excited about, and it feels weirdly jarring in many circumstances. As are other bits of density that we do have across our city. And then all that add together, it's actually not solving the key issue, which is affordability and a place for people to live. So this is literally from yesterday's paper. So if you earn 100K, which I always thought was a pretty good income, it's not enough to actually have a secure home, have a rental in this city anymore, let alone buy a house, which is increasingly impossible. And we've got this, obviously, there are complicated reasons behind this around low rental vacancy rates. The public housing wait list no longer fills that gap. That this year, the public housing wait list is pretty much the longest it's ever been, and the priority wait list is certainly the longest it's ever been. And the gap between buying a house, for many people, is no longer an option. There's that gap between incomes and prices. And I think it's really interesting to watch this. So you kind of think, it must be a global thing, this idea that house prices are going up. Actually, globally, house prices have been incredibly flat for many, many years. And I say this, and this is, I think, at the heart of this, we're making choices. So we make choices for really expensive housing. Everything that you saw today that's wrong is a result of a choice. We could choose something totally different. And that, for me, is the hope of this conversation today, is that we can, and we should, in fact we must, surely start making different choices, because what we're currently doing, I think, is fundamentally wrong. So, as Christy said, this conversation started a year ago, and one of the great things about being in Parliament is they give you a budget to go and travel and look at better things. So I did a 3-week European study tour with a week in Copenhagen and Malmo, a week in Utrecht and the Netherlands, and then a week in Paris, which has also gone through extraordinary changes. And just seeing, I came back extremely hopeful, because you know what, there is so much good stuff happening here. I mean, so many of you know the Cactus building, which is a very famous building, but it's actually student housing. So this idea, we can build beautiful, actually quite sustainable dwellings of this kind from that all the way through to, and Peter was reminding me today, we've kind of moved beyond sea containers now, which is a key point. But I did think this idea that you could have a student apartment, live and stay on the water in Copenhagen was a pretty fun idea. So we have lots of solutions. It's really exciting. So when I got to the Netherlands, Peter happened to be there as well, which is great, and we agreed to meet up. And thank you for we had a very interesting time looking around at what was happening. So this is at Bali, which does extraordinary prefab. In fact, I think they've even ramped up what they're doing now, where you literally have, how many days? I was trying to remember how many days it was from wood in for house out. Do you remember? About 2 weeks. So literally, so wood in one end, completed house on the completed house on the back of a truck 2 weeks later. Yeah, and I think they've got a new factory. It's going to be even quicker and better. I'm not sure what that means. So this extraordinary, and these are all built to passive house standard, really livable, really compact. Actually, designed for different sizes depending on households, but not a 250 square metre drying houses like we do, with very few people in them. Much more kind of really smart, good housing. And Peter will talk a bit more about that. I did. Shall I try this? I was like,
It's open.
all right, let's give it. It's open, so let's give it a go. Oh, okay. So I mean,
This is another one, Brett.
is this, it's just been okay.
It doesn't matter. It gives you
So I mean, this gives you a bit of an idea of these factories and these extraordinary places where you're seeing, extraordinary housing of a really high quality that's built prefab, go on the back of a truck and literally assembled overnight. It's pretty exciting, and at a build quality, and I can say this from walking through these houses, which is pretty extraordinary. Actually, I have seen these ones. These ones are amazing. They literally just get loaded. It's an apartment complex. Literally just gets put together. Or townhouse is probably the better way to say it. Yeah. So yeah, pretty amazing. Sorry, that was just a mere distraction. There's plenty of videos that we can share with you afterwards about.
No, you forget
Wrong one.
it.
And, so and then we're seeing these kind of go on site, and then of course then there's just really well other design housing, like this one here, which so we did a cycle tour around Utrecht. Here we have over 55s housing here. This is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Housing for young people just out of university. I was jokingly calling it under 35s housing because what do young people do now? And so these are long-term rentals until people can kind of do their own private rental or buy their own place. It's not for people at university, for young professionals, and these kind of clever bits of the housing market that we're not doing here that I thought were really interesting and a really important part of solution that is just not even being talked about here. All the way through to flex housing, and this for me was one of my favourites, and we've done a little bit of this here in the My Home project, for those of you familiar with what Michelle Blakely and others did in North Fremantle near the train station. Is probably the closest, but this was at scale, whole suburbs, whole communities of what's called flex housing, but the leases were longer than My Home. I think it's only a 10 or 15 year lease. These are 20 or 30 years. Government land that's not going to be used. This was a freeway interchange maybe for 20, 30 years in the future. At the moment, just where the government leases that land at quite a very affordable rate. From members, about €320 a month or something like that for a lot. And you bring your own house, your own house, but it has to be sustainable, and you can even build it on site while you're there. And there's this amazing communities. There's different communities and different bits to this, as these kind of flexible, self-built, or it could be some of the prefab stuff that we saw from the factory coming in and actually being formed part of these communities that are addressing a housing crisis with really innovative solutions now. And I came back from looking at, this is just a small taste of it, and Peter will talk in much more detail around what's happening there as the expert, realising, we have the solutions. But when we talk about then pulling every lever, as is often said, those levers actually have to be new, innovative levers, not just ramping up business as usual, which is kind of the main lever that we're pulling, which is around just delivering lots more of the same. And often, frankly, I do worry that the outcome of this big spend on housing, which is what we're doing, because it is largely business as usual, is going to create actually all the same problems that we saw before around poor quality, ghettos. I have really big concerns around actually what's happening in our communities right now and the legacy of this. And I think there are other things, if we're serious about addressing the housing crisis, we can and should do. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Peter, who is going to talk about this in a bit more detail. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Samen. I think, did you tell this one about the explanation? Oh, okay. Well, we had, Christy and I, one night, we thought, like, if we start a company, what's it going to be called, you know? So, and we came up with Denk Samen, which is Dutch for thinking together. And yeah, we thought that was a good name, and and we would like to think together with all of you to continue this. But that's just, you're just going to go through this. This is already said before. I would like to briefly give you something about the Dutch context there, what we're in now, and then I want to tell you about the expert team Woningbouw. It's an expert team on housing. That's where I'm part of. That's a group of experts that work with the government together to try to solve the housing crisis. Then I want to dive into a bit more detail, and that's then flex housing, what Brett already talked about, flex city. And then if we have time, I would like to go to the fixer-uppers, which is it's a bit different. It's about transformation of housing, or actually schools and other buildings into housing. And then at the end, we sort of all mix it together, flex housing and transformation, and see what comes out of it. Yeah, the Dutch context. I think when it's not so dissimilar from here. I think there's an awareness of we start to fall behind. Probably with COVID we dealt a bit differently here, but still we had it was quite disruptive here also for housing production. Then of course in the Netherlands we really had the Ukrainian war and all the refugees coming, which gave more pressure on the housing market because they all need to be housed. And then I think understaffed councils, more regulation, it's actually what we all sort of experience here as well. So lots of things are similar. Maybe in Europe we also, like especially in the Netherlands, we have the NOx, that's the nitrogen problem. We've got a lot of, actually we produce too much nitrogen, so now all the industries that produce nitrogen or too much, they basically have to stop that, and the building industry is a very much big producer, and also developing land is also producing a lot of nitrogen. So yeah, that's sort of slowed us down, but luckily, or it was good to see that sort of since 2024, mid last year, we started to see more building licenses coming through. So finally, it looks like we get a bit more momentum going to get more housing. And then what happened there? So in sort of 2017, 2018, the government said well, if we want to tackle this crisis, we want to work with business, with NGOs, with non-for-profits together, because just by ourselves we can't do it. So then we sort of moved from government-led policies and housing ideas or executions on that into government and business-led, and that was also the start of that expert team, where this from the industry and from all sorts of consultancies, people came together, work with government on the housing challenges we have. That's done under an agency, a government agency is called RVO. It's the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. The agency itself is more like they execute policies, but then on the housing crisis, there was more needed. It's just executing policies, so it became a bit of an idea, like a think tank, creating ideas. It's about 50, like me, sort of people that are part of it. Out of all different industries, so housing, but also energy transition, infrastructure, actually everything that sort of slows down or stops housing production is in there, and all together we try to help in general local governments with big challenges they have to get projects going, housing projects going. And it's government, but also like regions, or social housing companies. So everyone who's in this housing field and is non-for-profit, we try to help getting ahead. Often we are we sit in between them. We sit in between of those players, like local councils, social housing companies. They want to do something together. They don't play open cards. They're not completely transparent to each other. And then we, from the expert team, we just sit in that team and try to stimulate them to work together and to come, because basically they all want the same outcome. Huh? We all want to house people. So that's one of our roles. But then on the other one, and that's what I'm going to talk a bit more about today, is the brainstorming, the coming up with ideas. And one of the big one, but probably sort of 3-4 years ago, was the flex housing that got a real lift in the Netherlands. And Brad already touched on it. Like flex housing should not be sort of mixed up with container housing, because I mean I've spent probably a year of my life trying to tell people it's not container housing, you know, because like a lot of people have the term flex housing is a bit has become a bit negative in the beginning, because everyone was always referring to basically there's in the Netherlands lots of refugees in the beginning were staying in it, immigrants, but also they were just poor looking. So the container housing 1.0 look very different from, like this is an example of what flex housing is about nowadays. And just to emphasize this a bit more, I just want to show you a few examples of what flex housing is going to look like, or what it's looking like in the Netherlands. So there is well, this mainly sort of, what is it, little family houses. They're about 50-60 square meter of size. These are very compact. Often it's like one parent, 2 kids, or a couple living in there. But also, here at the top, you see the one that Brad showed in the video. So they're like, the company's called Start Block, so they're for starters. They're 3 stories, 20 square meter per floor, so 60 square meters. And they just built in a factory, come on the back of a truck. They lay on their back. So they have 5 by 4 is the footprint. So they fit under every crossover in the Netherlands on the back of the truck, and then they just get craned into place on site. And then so that on the right there you see the one from the invite, the picture. And that's like a 5-story apartment building. It's just sitting there for 15 years, and then it's going to go somewhere else. So that's also the form of flex housing. And you can see it here. It's in all sort of forms and shapes, and and there's all different builders that make these products. Up to big projects altogether. Yeah, they can look like as if it's like a holiday house park, vacation park, but also underneath there. You know, they're all sort of side by side like townhouses. Yeah, and then I want to, so before we get into like the big flex city or the big flex housing, so I just want to explain a little bit more about the mechanics of it, just to give you an understanding. So the government has committed to 1 million houses in the Netherlands before 2030, and that's a mix of all sorts of houses. Transformation is in there, but also modular and prefabricated housing. That's the flex houses we're talking about. And the flex houses in total is 37,500 for last year. Well, unfortunately, we only made 25,000, but you can still see that we went to the factory with Brad. It's still ramping up, and I'm sure we're going to hit those 37,000 a year very soon. Then you can ask, like, why flex housing? Because ideally you just want to build permanent housing. But we come from a period where it's very challenging to get housing across the line. And same here in Perth. I was just talking to James before. Like to get a big subdivision approved or get a big tower approved, it takes so long. And in 2010, the Dutch government took on board the Crisis and Recovery Act, which sort of that was for a lot of different fields, but also it said about housing. If you do housing temporary, you don't have to run through all these big procedures and approvals to because it's going to go again after 10 or 15 years, so it's not a big deal, so it's much easier. Then for everyone who's been to the Netherlands, you might have noticed there's very little space. So we have, on the east we have agriculture and national parks, and on the west everything is planned and everything is built up. So there's no greenfield space left, there's a bit of brownfield, but often that is all claimed for the future. I think Brett already said it, like, you know, that the photo that he showed from that flex houses that was in Eindhoven, in the future there will be a widening of the freeway, but that's not going to happen for the next 20, 30 years, so we can put houses on there. And that sort of made us think that there's lots of that land available in the Netherlands. So we started using that as an argument to build our case for flex housing. We don't have land for permanent housing. We still have 1 million people that we need to house. Or, 1 million houses that we have to build. We need to house much more people. We also need to house different target groups. So it's not, it's social, it's like families, it's like starters, it's a whole mix. And we need to do it quickly. So we have this temporary land available. The other thing is, like, when we were thinking about like building something for 15 years, also addresses a lot of questions for the future. You know, we've seen like families are becoming smaller. We can build smaller houses. We have climate change. We have in Holland as well. We have threat of rising sea level, rising water tables as well. So we might have to move houses in the future. So basically, this flex housing actually was an answer to a lot more questions as well. Another one I already touched on was the immigrants coming, or the refugees coming from the Ukrainian war, but also we've got a very successful company in the south of the Netherlands called ASML. They make chips, very smart chips, and they needed a lot more workforce, smart workforce coming from all over Europe. They need to be housed. So all these sort of future needs are also addressed by flex housing. So when this all started to kick off, what happened? Well, we got lots of builders jumping into this market. It was just a big mayhem of all sorts of different houses that was being built. So the government started to introduce standardizing. So they developed a PMC. It's a product market combination. There's about 14 different standards, or 14 different typologies, where 4 of are removable. So that made it a lot more easier for social housing companies or other investors to actually buy product, because they knew what was on offer. The government then stepped in and they ordered 2,000 dwellings, which sort of boosted this industry, or gave it an extra boost to that industry. So the government bought 2,000 dwellings and then on-sold them to housing companies that needed quickly more houses. Following on from that, ADIS is that's the overarching body for housing corporations, social housing corporations. They decided to do something similar. They negotiated standard contracts and ceiling prices with 35 different builders for 3 times 8,000 houses. So you can imagine that gave again a big boost to investors, to builders. They all wanted to sort of jump in and try to scale up these building companies. Hence, what Brett told you, when we went to Bali, it was their first big warehouse where I think they did 30 or 40 houses a week, and they were about to open their completely robotized factory, where they would then double the amount of houses that they could pump out every week. So massive boost for the industry. On top of that, it was also the product, the way of building the product. Like I said, in Bali, in the factory, it's all clean. Just the way and also the product itself changed. Because in the beginning, it was all built for social housing companies that were targeting a certain clientele. So where mum and dad got divorced, one has to go, but there's no house. So there's a lot of that sort of situation where we need a house now quickly. So the first let's say the first 2,000 that we talked about, but also a lot of the houses now are small and compact houses, and they seem to work for the groups that need houses at the moment. Like a lot of young people leave mom and dad, start in their housing career. They can live in compact houses of 50, 60 square meters. That's not an old thing in the Netherlands, like that you live in a house of 50 square meters or 60 square meters. Bert was already touching on that. I grew up in an apartment with my sister and a dog and my parents of 70 square meters. And that's very common. You've seen the video of Starblock, but we can always send that to everyone. Yeah? The other thing I want to touch on is that this whole system, or this whole new way of looking at housing, also gave the government an opportunity to that's not. It's a bit off the sheet, I think. Yeah. It gave the opportunity to put to push the sustainability agenda a bit more, which means that we started to lift the game on how these houses were going to look like. So they all need to be energy neutral, those new houses, or we are now in a phase it's called almost energy neutral, and I think in 2028 they need to be energy neutral. But what a lot of builders do then, they just put the roof full with solar panels, but of course that has an impact on the environment, the use of the how do you say, the build of the panels, the solar panels, has its impact on the environment. So we also came up with the Milieuprestatie, the MPG. So your house has to perform on a measure on how less impact it will have on the environment. And these two are often an offset, so that you need to find a balance between the two. Next to that, we have the circularity index. So all the houses have a passport, and you can see this what materials are used in the houses, and what's going to happen with them if we take the houses apart again. So you need to score on all these different items. You need to score above a certain level. There's subsidies involved. So if you don't comply with this, then there's no money. So it was a very straightforward prerequisite to be part of Flex City and all the attached subsidies on that. Then I don't know how many developers there are in the room, but like a flex house, you put it somewhere out for 10 or for 15 years. It's a high quality house, so it costs as much and probably per square meter actually more as a traditional built house. And to operate that for 15 years is not going to make you a return. You're not going to make back the house. So, and there is the expert team came in like, we need to come up with a solution for this, because we invest in houses that can be operated for 50 years, but we only have a plot for 10 or 15 years. So that means that if I, as a social housing company or any other investor, I want to have at least 30 years or 40 years of operating the house. So I need to have a second spot. I need to be able, after 15 years, pick the house up and put it somewhere else. But most of the councils, they didn't want to give that, they don't want to promise, they didn't want to do that promise, especially not in a contract form. So there was always this standoff between, we all want to do it, we all want to house these people, we've got this massive shortfall in the business model, and we don't know how to solve it. So what happened in the end? Nothing. So the investment decision was not made. And that's where the central government with the expert team came in. So we developed some sort of guarantees. One was a financial guarantee, and the other one like a physical spot guarantee. The financial guarantee is that you get a you get a fixed amount of money for your house after 10 or 15 years. So that sort of that big grey area for what's the house going to be worth after 10, 15 years, that's gone. There's a fixed, and I'll explain it more a bit later. And then there is the physical relocation model. So we actually what we did is we create plots where after 15 years these houses can go to. So we make this sort of master planned communities with a couple of houses already in there, and the rest of the flex houses can come over time and create this little flex city. Well, the financial relocation model works as follows. So you must imagine, so the lifespan, the economic lifespan of the house was set on 30 years. And so we write it off like linear. So let's say the house costed 100,000 euros. After 15 years, the house is worth 50,000 euros. If you put it on the market for 35, and you sell it for 35, let's say 40,000, then there is 10,000 gap. The central government is picking up 60% of that. The council is picking up 25% of that, and the investor itself, like the social housing company, is still paying 15% of that. So that gave the investors or the social housing companies, that gave them the comfort to go ahead with these investment decisions. But of course, there's also a lot of these companies they didn't want to sell. They wanted to, after 15 years, they wanted to keep. We've invested in this house. We want to keep it. We want to put it somewhere else. And for these people, we came up with the physical relocation model. So basically, what we do, we guarantee 30 years of operation of these houses. So you do 10 or 15 years wherever in the Netherlands, and then after that period, you get another 15 years on a flex city, which is as I described. We have 7 of these designated flex cities now in the Netherlands, and altogether they have 2,000 spots available. That doesn't feel like a lot, but we've calculated a multiplier of 10 on that, and that is because we think that a lot of these houses are never going to move, because after 10 or 15 years, people living in there, becoming part of the community, no one is going to say like, they need to go, or they need to. So there is a lot more, like, we needed this for the investors to make the investment, so to give them comfort to make the investment decision, so that they either have this fallback financially, or they can move their house to Flex City. There's a lot more into it, but as I said, we worked on this for 2.5 years, and I tried to tell you in 20 minutes what it's all about. Just going further on the Flex Cities itself. So a Flex City is about 500 dwellings, which of 200 are built now at the beginning. They're all like circular, modular, sustainable houses, and there is about 300 spots around it for to bring these houses to that run out of their operation model after 15 years. The government is going to give 12,000. So the central government is giving to local government 12,000 euros per plot, and 18,000 euros per plot that's kept vacant for potentially 30 years, because we run a Flex City for 30 years. So for a Flex City of 500 dwellings, you get 9.6 million subsidy, and we had actually quite quickly, we had seven councils that wanted to start a Flex City, because there's another big advantage to it, and I'll tell you in the next sheet. But here I also print some models, like you can have a Flex City sort of in an existing neighborhood, and also there in the middle there it's more like in a new area, or if you can have it scattered over. That's the top right, those three images. You can have it scattered over town, the different plots. We also worked out what sort of densities, like, because there's Flex Cities near a big city, but there's also Flex Cities in the middle of nowhere. You can imagine the ones in the big cities. They're going to be more they're going to be more used for multi-story flex houses. They're going to go there. The single-story ones, they're going to be more in the country. And now the interesting thing is that a lot of these councils, they use this as a booster or like a place-making tool for new area developments. So, so they have a bit of a master planned new area where they want to develop, and in a corner of it, they say, well, we're going to start here with Flex City. We already know, what's all going to come there, and we're slowly going to grow. We use these plots for Flex City. We're also going to use them for. Do I have to speed up? Oh, okay. So we're also going to use these empty spots. We're going to use them for traditional housing, if we want to. Because if we want to, we just build traditional houses on them, and we create new plots as guarantee plots further up. So that's that second. Is that see? Oh yeah. So that second one, you see that sort of this change in color, but we still need the same amount of so 300 vacant plots. Here you still see every sort of six angle hexagon is representative of 50 plots. Of 50 plots, and so it's growing. And you see in the third picture, you can see it's growing bigger. And so basically, this 9.6 million that was actually is used by the local council to kickstart new area developments. Yes, and then so we are all. This is in the beginning. This was all sort of on the drawing board. But in the meantime, as I said in the beginning, we also help councils that have real life issues. And there was one council in the south of the Netherlands called Zertogenbosch, and they had a big area development of 1,400 dwellings. And there is a housing corporation, Zayas, that was going to build 250 dwellings, something like that, amongst those 1,400 dwellings for social housing. But these 1,400 dwellings would take 10 years, so all different phases. And Zaya said, no, we want that now. We don't want to wait for 10 years because we have this massive waiting list. So we want to build those houses now. But I mean, the whole plan was not planned out yet. So what they did is something similar. They actually, this is that big part sort of that you all can see the sand. That's the area development. And in a corner of it, like here, they built 275 flex houses in little groups of 20, 25 houses with a communal area in the middle. Built them quickly so that all these people can go and live there. So start to get stress off their waiting list. And the idea was like when all this area is going to be developed, we just pick up like a little pocket of 25 houses that have been in that corner for, I don't know, 5 years or 8 years. They have social structures. We pick up the whole suburb and we put it into the new phase of the development. So that's what that sort of this picture is here. So it's so basically all these houses are getting moved slowly over 10, 15 years, all into the development because you can just pick them up. Yeah, they're flex houses. This is what it's going to look like. So the big picture, the draw up picture, that's like a whole part of it, and those small bits, like sort of these sort of bits, they pick them up, and then in the future they will be built. They will be put somewhere else. Well, what you see, the other pictures you see, is the first phase that is built now. So this is actually a part that they can pick up later and then put further up in the development. And now, is this? Oh no, that's not going to work. Can you remember how we did it? So to start this video.
Not everyone. You try. If you go to the.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then go.
Yeah.
No, sorry, we've lost it.
Bummer.
Sorry.
Oh. And now I go back to this.
Yeah. To this.
there was like a drone flyover of this little suburb, but I think you can already see it a bit here. So that's the first phase of those flex houses that are all being built, but also the infrastructure itself. So the area between the houses, the green, but also the car parking, everything is removable. So you can take it all out and put it somewhere up in the new development at a later stage. And now I was here in Perth, driving around, as you do, as a developer. And this is Bentley. So at the bottom there, that yellow, that's Manning Road, the line through it. And there's this massive area that almost has the shape of the thing I showed you before. And I found out there is also a bit of a master plan there, and a lot of similar things to the other plan is called Stack. So very similar to Stack. And I was thinking, like, what if we would do here in Perth the same thing? So here to your left again, that's Manning Road. That's where all the amenities are. You know, there's a library there. There's housing. So what if we, as a community here, say, no, we're going to build 100 houses in that little bit here. And just over time, when we develop the rest of that Bentley area, we're just gonna pick those houses up and move them further up in the suburb. Not very dissimilar from what we did at Stack. And why is it not possible to have it look like those pictures that I showed you there? Yeah, of course, the other opportunity, same thing, same site in Bentley. We could start building in all these little pockets that we have in Perth. We can put flex houses on there, and then when they have to go after 10 years, why not bring them to Bentley? Why not bring them to that big site and have them have them lived or used there on that site? And so when I was thinking about it, I saw more sites. There's one near the hospital at Joondalup. I saw one. There's one in Beaconsfield. There's one, and then I was talking about this with Brett, and he said, "Oh, have you heard about the Roe Highway extension? That's not going to happen. Do you know how much land that is to?" So I drove past it, and I thought, "Oh, we could just, forever we could put flex houses on there." So if you look at it that with sort of with a bit of a different mindset, there's so much space where we can do all this. And so I want to, from here, I want to jump into this transformation. I still have time for the transformation? Just briefly, because it's all about business models and techniques and all that sort of stuff. But Flex City is also a home to people. We've been working with social entrepreneurs. We've been working with city planners, with urban designers, to make sure that this all is like a nice place to live. You must imagine if you live in that suburb where there's 200 houses plus 300 vacant plots. That's a lot of space, that you have. So of course, over time it gets filled up with other houses, but these vacant plots can be used as veggie gardens, as to kick the soccer ball around, to kick the football around, to do all sorts of stuff. So it becomes a very nice place to live. It's also an innovator, and I think that the nice thing about Flex City is because you move it away, you can basically stuff it up. So like nowadays, if you build big towers and big suburbs, it's there forever, and you can't stuff it up because it will be there forever, and you'll be always reminded of the mistake you made, and you will be But if you can take it away and put it in a different configuration somewhere else, then it's a lot more forgiving. The last thing I want to say about flex housing is that, and this is the same as with the container houses. Flex housing is not an alternative to traditional housing. Because that's a lot of people say, but why would I go through all this if I can do like normal housing? I mean, that's still there for 200 years. But we need to see that it's an alternative to no housing. That's how we have to look at flex housing. It's always better to have permanent housing, but sometimes there's just not the space or there's not the context to do that. Then quickly into transformation. I was involved with a company in the Netherlands, and what they did is like they bought up old schools and they transformed them into housing. And this is a school in Leiden, which is a typical city in the Netherlands. Here, the canal going through Leiden. There's even like a little windmill here, an old windmill. Typical Dutch mosque here. And then there's the school here. So all these classrooms, you can convert them like 2 classrooms to an apartment or something. And they're quite good size, you know, and they're quite well organized. There is always like a walkway or like a corridor or something with the classroom, so you can actually organize them very easily. And this, so at the bottom here, this is how what it was supposed to look like in the end. So this is the school again. This is this is the same as this thing. This is the gym. That's here. And then this green area here, along this little canal here, and here, that was I think the old schoolyard or something. They built all these, they were going to build all these townhouses, side to side, the terraced houses. Yeah, I say that very quickly, simple, that's how I do it. But we did help the people that buy those plots or buy a legal right to build an apartment in the school, and we gave them plot passports. And a plot passport is actually like in layman's language, like what are you allowed to build? How do you deal with the common walls, you know, between the apartments, and all that sort of stuff. And what we did, what was a very important thing, is the customer coach. This is Helen, the customer coach, and she's picking up the phone. You know, if you come into trouble, you're fighting with your neighbor or your future neighbor, or you sacked your builder or your architect, and you call her, and she will connect you to another one, or she will put you and your neighbor back together and organize events where all the people that bought in that house, in that building, come together and share experiences and, you know, share each other's drills and other sort of stuff. So you get a real community feel in those projects. And so this photo is actually of the end result. So all these houses are built side to side. They all have common walls, in the shared walls in the middle. Somehow they've all worked it out how they were going to do that. And there's a real high community feel in those projects. So, and that was also the vision of that company. The company was called called Steenvlinder, and they were it was almost like that property was just a side thing, you know. Like what they really want to do was build communities, and they want to make the owners are proud because they built their own house, you know, and they have shared all the equipment with their neighbors. So they have a vibrant community. They all come together now. They know each other. And in the end, that will create healthy cities. The other thing, of course, what is if you keep these buildings, you save a lot of energy. Right? So all the energy that's gone into there when this thing was built 30, 40 years ago, is still there. You also save a lot of memories. Funny enough is that quite a few people that live in those houses now, they went to that school when they were younger, and they played on the schoolyard, or they have memories there. And if you demolish that, then it's gone. There's less carbon release, and then in the Netherlands, important, there is also a lot less nitrogen released. Again, with that in the back of your mind, you start driving around Perth, and you come across the Beaconsfield TAFE site. So this was 2021. We did like a sort of with that other project in the back of our mind. We went through looked through the school, and we did a, as they call it, market-led proposal. So we put a plan forward about and how we would like to develop the site and to keep as much of the existing structures as possible. So so on the left at the bottom there, it's not really big, but so here, this is all like really concrete buildings here, all school buildings with classrooms and gyms and all that sort of stuff, theater, and so we said, well, we keep all that. Yeah, there's a lot of energy went in there. There's lots of memories there, and you see that on this picture. You see that here. So this is all the classrooms. They turn into apartments here as well. There was a theater that could turn. There was a sort of a community center. We made a pool here with a cafe, and this was all. This area was all bits of these tin sheds. And we thought, well, you know, we use that. Oh, that's a bit funny. We use that to make workshops in the beginning. Start on the top side here. Start on this side where all the classrooms are. And then when that's finished, we demolish these tin sheds and we make a little community there as well with no cars and compact housing. Yeah, good idea, we thought. Well, I don't know, something went wrong here. The same picture just tells you what's all happening everywhere. And these are sort of the memories, these are the photos there, the memories that you could share with. But, yeah, it's gone now. So it's just a vacant site now sitting there waiting to be developed. So what's next? Well, I live part of the time. I live in Inglewood, and I'll be a resident there. And all of a sudden, I got this letter from the government saying, "Hey, the ECU Mount Lawley campus redevelopment." And I always go running there through that campus, and I thought, "Gee, great buildings there." Similar thing as with Beaconsfield, similar thing as the thing in Leiden in the Netherlands. Yeah, look at it. You know, like there is fantastic buildings here. Here, look at the funny shapes. There's all this student accommodation there. Imagine what you could do here, like with flex houses, with transformation, with yeah. And I would just reach out to all of you. Come and help me. Let's get something really exciting going here. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there any questions? We're at 4:30, so we've got plenty of time for questions and time to exit in time.
Ideas. Yeah.
Was all the flex housing social housing?
Actually, up till mid last year, yes. And now we have Rabobank, which is a big net bank from the Netherlands. They've sort of stepped into the space of, I think you call it here, sort of mid-tier or police and nurses, or something like that. It's sort of that mid-area, and they've stepped into that. So they are now developing flex housing for that target group. So slowly it's coming. Also migrant workers. So that's also an area where flex housing is used for.
So what happens if when you look at relocating them, people can't actually afford the land where they're to relocate to?
Yeah, that's like by law in the Netherlands, you can actually, if you have a building license for a project that runs for 15 years, then there is after 15 years you can actually, you have no, basically you can just ask the tenants to leave. So that's your ground sort of to finish the rental contract. The alternative is, of course, that you offer your tenant to move with you to the new spot. So that's not I don't think it's the best outcome, but, you know, like I said, flex housing is an alternative to no housing.
What was the feedback you got from government on the Beaconsfield TAFE?
So we went to, I think to 4 or 5 of the state departments. They all were very excited about the idea, but all of a sudden we got a letter like, yeah, sorry, we're gonna let the demolishment contract, and that was it. Yeah. So it was very disappointing. I mean, we worked on it for like, I don't know, 6 months, something. We had the feeling that we were getting a lot of positive feedback. So, sorry.
I thought the existing building had concrete cancer.
Yeah. Well, didn't look like that, but you can still.
It had some, but it wasn't catastrophic. So sorry, just context of this. I was the mayor of the city at the time. Yeah, we were really keen to see it adapted as well. It was just the most frustrating, slow moving. Unfortunately, the government was so slow moving that it ended up being trashed and gutted. So that it just took so long for government to make a decision that by the time state government just couldn't make a decision. And during that time, someone went through, ripped out all the wiring, copper, ripped out all the, and so it just got to the point where I think they were like, oh, actually, this is no longer.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame because it could have been, early on, actually could have been used for a range of purposes.
So being agile and nimble seems like a really key part of the Dutch government. You've got a problem, you've got migrants coming and refugees coming. We don't have that sense of urgency here.
Well, yeah, maybe there's not 50,000 refugees knocking on your door, but you have, I don't know, 50,000 kids that want to move out. You have.
We still have a housing gap like 25,000 by 2027. So we got a growing gap between housing supply and so which we I mean part of the point I think which I think is really powerful about this is I don't think we can build our way out of with standard building practices this crisis. But the gap will just keep growing. If we don't have unless we try something different. I think this is what's exciting in this is right. You can use that to start to close that gap with different product.
The vacant land where the
Sorry, Kelly was going to make the joke. Go, Kelly.
You want to put it in a hand up already for a few times.
Thank you for your presentation. That was really, really good as well. I think the most powerful statement is that this isn't a solution to traditional homes, but building no homes. And I think that statement's really true that we can't build our way out of it. It's going to take decades and decades and decades to get there. So we need homes right now. I just wonder, two questions. When you're going to pick up these homes and put them in different locations, what happens to the communities that have been built there over 15 years, be it 20 years? What happens to those when they almost get displaced? And then where you're moving them to, the plots almost have to be identical to fit that module. And how do they sit together? And then the second question being, I think you kind of almost answered your own question during the presentation. You were saying, after 15 years, people won't want to move. So then how do you convince government or landowners to give up that temporary land for 15 years when there is that real risk of community forced to say, we want to stay, we don't want to move and go somewhere else? So how do you manage to deal with that? Because I think it's it is a solution, and especially construction workers, that we need people to come here to build homes. The problem is they don't know where to live. So this is also a pretty good solution to having almost like workforce communities that can come in and have temporary homes so that we can build more permanent homes. But how do you deal with those challenges?
Yeah. Well, the first one is a bit technical, but that's easy actually, because what we with Flex City, we prepare Flex City we build all the infrastructure, but don't finish the plots yet. So all the main infrastructure is all in, and every area can be loaded with 50 houses. Doesn't matter if it's stacked or it's all the connections and all that thing is there for 50 houses. So a year before the first operation period of these flex houses is going to end, because you have that land for 15 years. So year 14, you call someone is called the Markmeester. He's overseeing all these flex cities. You call this person. He's giving the go on in that flex city to actually finalize that plot with 50 apartments or 50 small terraced houses or whatever sort of configuration is coming to. And then in a year that's ready, and then the houses are coming from. So that's just a technical thing. your question on the tenants is a bit similar as what you asked. You know, like basically the tenants have a contract up till end of the building license or the exploitation license of these houses. Then it's up to them. They either move with the houses to the new area, or you know, if you have a good housing corporation that feels like, okay, I'm responsible for these people, I'm going to put them up in other houses now because I had 15 years to organise that. Or it's just the end of the contract.
Did you say also you tried to move them as a community? Was that something?
Yeah, but that was in this particular project.
Yeah,
so
okay.
In Stack, that's what we did. We just did them with the whole, like the community of like 20 houses. We moved the whole lot, but they only moved like 400 meters down the road. You know, so they're still part of the same area. But if you live in a group dwellings of 20 flex houses somewhere in The Hague, and there is a spot for them somewhere in Rotterdam, on a flex city in Rotterdam, yeah, too bad. Then the whole 20 houses moves to Rotterdam, and then you, of course, as a tenant, you hope that then your housing company is going to put you up somewhere else in The Hague.
My question is actually a follow-on from that. Is like, I know that our main roads department and local government and stuff would be very hesitant to allow that to happen because they don't want to be seen as bad guys in 15 years' time when it's time to relocate these people and there's potentially nowhere for them to go. So I can tell you now, main roads would definitely not agree to that because of that reason.
But it's the same that we like. If you go back 5 years, 7 years, we had the same challenge in the Netherlands. You know, the roads, the infrastructure department, they would actually oppose to the building license of that precinct. You know, that flex housing precinct. So we actually basically two government departments, almost fighting each other in court. But you know, like. You know, it's all about you don't know. People don't know. You know, they only see the hard lines around it, and they want to protect their interest. And but in the end, you know, we all need more houses. These people that work with this department or that department, you know, everyone has kids that need to move somewhere. Grandparents that need to move somewhere. So.
Can I ask about that too, Melinda? Because I think it is solvable. I mean, so that. Go back to my home, it's PTA land. PTA land, domestic knowledge they never used, but they had exactly the same responses. Like in 10 or 15 years time, we don't want to be the bad guys. So I think that's where you've got to have it. So it sits with the whole of government, and communities, broader, and local government. I mean, and acknowledging that there really will be places for them to move if everyone gets on board. There is so much vacant government land in the state. And you look around and. So the idea that there isn't somewhere for them to move, I think, is highly unlikely, but it needs the government to normalise and coordinate this so that can happen. Look, and we've got PTA with lots of work over the line on my home, but you're right, main roads have been much more resistant but they have a huge amount of land. That's the Department of Communities that they're not ready to develop. So I think this is why it's interesting around how we can take the lessons of what's happened in the Netherlands.
There in the back, I think there's also someone.
Demolition here in WA is so easy, and you can demolish anything, and there's no problem. So with the high school and later, I mean, did the government say, or the council say, come up with alternatives what you can do with before you can have it demolished? Or what's the story? Or can you say, well, I'll flatten it, and then I'll decide on what I'm going to do with it?
Yeah, I would say, like, you're not allowed to demolish it. Let the market come with ideas, but you're not allowed to demolish it. And what you see in sometimes these buildings are also very restrictive. So like, if you demolish and you start again, you can just be very maximal plot size but because we didn't allow that, the market got very creative, you know, and they started to top up buildings to get more program to make higher land value. So, but you know, it starts somewhere. I mean, someone has to do something to break the cycle. I think. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm fully sold on the kind of factory built prefabricated
So I'm just wondering how, for our context, it could be more envisaged that yes, we absolutely need to look at factories that can fast track things, but can it not be a more permanent approach to a sort of master factory community that isn't going to move anywhere? And that actually maybe the modules are a bit more adaptable so that you can stick to next to each other and grow into a larger place, or stack them on top of each other, and so that you can actually stay in place, age in place, create a community that flourishes over time, doesn't negatively impact any more land, and potentially regenerates the land that's sat on as a more kind of integrated approach. So, just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, ideally you would do that. Ideally you would like, you use that, I think that the knowledge that's built now on like how do you create very low impact, energy efficient, compact houses. And often these factories, they don't sell a flex house, they sell a house that can be put there permanently.
Yeah.
But if you say like, I only have the land for 15 years, then you can take it away. And then often the land is earmarked for something else, or it's been used for something else.
Right.
There's no one who's going to cut down a forest and put their houses for 15 years. You know? So this is often like land that is sitting on the water. Maybe I'm working on a project now where there is a lot of land that is earmarked for as a business park. But we know like that's not going to be filled for the next 20 or 30 years. So why not use it? We already know what for business park is going to come in there. We know like the street pattern already. We can just build that now, and we put all housing in there. And then after 20 years, no one wants the house to go.
Last question, James.
We know that Perth is very risk averse. We know that it's a very conservative community, and look, I think this is absolutely fantastic, and what a great opportunity. So I guess the question is, how can we find a pilot site? How can we actually start? Because when people in Perth, when they see it and they feel it, they go, oh, okay, maybe it's not so scary. But we really do need, you've mentioned the Beaconsfield site, and you mentioned a whole bunch of others, Bentley. Why don't we find a spot somewhere and do the pilot and get going? Because
I'm in.
how do we do something? I mean, I guess my question is the call to action.
Yeah.
We've obviously got a room full of people here that are interested to hear about innovative ideas from Europe, and I think it could work in Perth. But I guess maybe it's more of a question for Brad around where's the political will, because we haven't seen it for the last 8 years.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of political imagination. So I think that's what's kind of been good about this. Like this time a year ago, I didn't imagine this was a thing that you could do. So now I think once you've got the idea, then it's around how do you identify your champions, which could be in local government, or it could be local government, and it would probably be state government land. So we take Freo, which I obviously know the best. Like there is almost every bit of vacant land in the city of Fremantle is owned by the state government, and there's no way they're developing it all in the next decade. So there is plenty of opportunities, and I expect Freo's not more from that regard. Lots of local governments in this situation. So I think you need to find a local government champion who can then sit down and work with the department and say, look, let's try this. And look, John Kerry and I are in the same political team. I'd say John's up for innovation. I think he kind of gets the idea that we need to try new things.
So, with the cost of construction at the moment holding a lot of things back, I mean, you've got the Bayswater Department community site sitting there with a 20-year horizon on it because they can't afford to develop it now. It would be ideal to do something like this now because we've got a homeless problem that's growing and we've got a waiting list that's growing exponentially.
That's right. And if you have communities kind of saying publicly, we're just going to sit on this for 15, 20 years before we develop it, before we think it's realistic, then that's kind of actually the kind of stuff you say, well, let's just do this. And if it was just a 10-year ground lease, no, you can move it. I think we actually make.
Well, that's the thing, the business model. If you can move it and stretch that up to, the best business model, of course, is 10 years somewhere, and then permanent on the next spot. I don't have to explain to you that is the most favourable business model.
But then there's a direction you should be presenting this to high school students, because they're the next voters, they're the next town planners, they're the next architects. So it's almost like
need to try. You don't need to try.
Local, they're